guys, and welcome to another video from me. We are going to be doing my August wrap up today, looking at all of the books that I read in the month of August and if I would recommend them to you guys. In August, I mainly focused on rereading the Hunger Games series. I still have 2 books to go, but I should finish Ballad today and get into Sunrise this week, but we will just have to see how all of that goes. So those reviews obviously won't be in this video, but if you are curious about those reviews, they will be in this week's vlog. Also, I have Goodreads and all the other bookish social medias linked down below in the description of this video. Let's get into it. The first book that I completed this month was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, and this one, I don't know if it's my favorite in the series or not because it is tied in rating with another one. I gave this a 4.5. I loved it. For the characters, I never realized how much of a character study these books are. And that was my favorite part reading this book. This was my first time reading the book since 2012, 2011, sometime way back then. I think it was 2012. The layers of these characters, it's like an onion, you know, just pulling back the layers. It's so good because as a kid, it's just like, these people are just the way that they are. But no, people are not like that. That the humans are way more complex. We are the way that we are because of the experiences and how we were raised and all of that, but mainly the experiences. So Haymitch and Katniss were my favorites. This is told at Katniss's perspective. It's first person perspective, which I usually don't like, but I do think here it's done incredibly well. But Haymitch, he's a character that, you know, as a kid we just saw, okay, he's kind of weird, but okay, he has so much trauma. He went through the Hunger Games himself. He's been a mentor for like 25 years. Every child that he has mentored has died. They've not come back. They've lost the games. Think of what that does to a person. It's crazy, and it definitely explains why Haymitch is the way that he is, why he has like an addictive personality. It's just, it's crazy to think about that because I never thought about that as a kid with the character of Haymitch. Now at times Katniss did get like really in her head and that would annoy me, but I'm like, she is going into an arena with how many people is it? Like 23 other people, and has to fight to the death. So it makes sense why she is so paranoid, but at times it just did kind of irritate me, but again, it does make sense. Now for the atmosphere, it is really good. You're getting introduced to this world, and with the Hunger Games themselves, you're kind of learning about that system as our characters learn about it, and that's something that I really enjoy, or as our character does, because as I said, this is only told at Katniss's perspective, but I still had a lot of lingering questions of why certain things were the way that they were, and most of those questions didn't get answered, but again, I still have 2 more books to read and they might get answered later on. Now the writing, I think this is the best written of all of Suzanne Collins' books. This is to the point. This is young adult, and that might just be why it is the way that it is, but it's so accessible, so easy to read, and we don't need all this dilly-dallying, and I love when a book can do that. Now personally, I think I would have made the chapters in the game a little more fast-paced, simplified the stakes. But overall, I love the writing. I was amazed by how much I actually liked the writing here. Now for the plot is just so crazy to think about, because when I read this, you know, as a 12-year-old girl, I was like, Katniss and Peeta and Gale, a love triangle, and all these kids fighting to the death. I didn't really realize what this book is saying. The series is about taking down a totalitarian government, which obviously I knew when I read this, we're taking down the government in it, but it just didn't click as much because, I mean, again, my frontal lobe is developed now and I know a lot more than I did back then. Like the Peacekeepers remind me so much of the Stasi, who were the secret police in East Germany. Like it was crazy just how I have read about all these multiple different dictatorships, you know, Soviet Union, whatever, Germany, reading about all these different ones now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can totally see a real world example of this kind of situation. And another huge theme is Eat the Rich, of how there is that 1% on the top. They're living their best lives. They're not caring about everybody else, everybody on the bottom. And they're like, they kind of look to the people on the bottom as entertainment, and they're like, oh, those people's worries, they don't matter. Like, we're living our best lives. And I just never realized how much of a big theme that is. And I do think that is the biggest theme here. It's just that 1%, how they do not care about all the people below them on the ladder, but you would not be at the top if it was not for those on the bottom. And we're going to get more into that when we talk about some of the other books in the series. And with that, about where you are born, it's just pure luck that is the situation that you're put into, because if you're born into the capital, you don't have to be scared of going into the Hunger Games. You live a life of luxury. You have that privilege. And the people born in the districts, they don't have that. They have to work. They have to try to survive every single day. They are trying to survive out here. And I think that is so much, we can just compare that to the games themselves, because in the games, these people are all trying to survive and to make it out on top. And isn't that what everybody else is doing? Everybody's just trying to get by day to day to make it to the next day. And that is what is happening in the games. Now, in the games, it's obviously in a lot more violent of a way and not as mundane as day-to-day life, but still, everybody is just trying to get by. As I said, we're taking down the government in this, and rebellion, and how rebellion is something so difficult to get going. Not just one person can do it. You really need a lot of people backing you, and there's so much of history that we just are sitting there watching happen and not doing anything about it. And that's how I feel like a lot of this book is, like, they watch these games every year, but it's like, what can we do about it? That's just the way life is. And I think so many people can relate to that in the real world. So it's been a good chunk of time since I read the book originally, so I remembered like key plot points, but it was just getting from point A to point B, putting the pieces of the plot puzzle together. I had so much fun doing that, because I was like, okay, how are we going to get to this? How is this going to happen? Does this happen? Am I remembering this correctly? So I did really enjoy that and had a lot of fun with this book, but definitely the character work was my favorite part. Let's talk Catching Fire now by Suzanne Collins. This was my favorite book of my teenage years, but now out of the main 3 books, it was the one to rank the lowest. I give this a straight up 4-star, but still, obviously I would recommend, highly recommend. Now with the character work here, we're having a lot of exploration of PTSD. So a lot of times, you know, reading the sci-fi and fantasy genres, war is always a big thing. People are going through traumatic stuff in those books, and they're completely fine. Like, they're like, yep, that happened, let's move on. No, that is not what happens in real life. When people face trauma in real life, they are going to have some kind of mental reaction to it. And that's what we're seeing here. We talked about Haymitch in the first book, but we see Katniss, who is really, Peeta too, who, you know, have nightmares and are just really struggling after the events of the first book. And that's completely realistic. And I love that that gets depicted. Again, as a kid, I don't think I really registered all of that, but now I know, like, PTSD is a thing, and just the mental health depiction in here is done so well. And I just think that's so important, because I don't want people to be reading fantasy books, especially young adult fantasy, and and sci-fi as well. They're seeing these people go through traumatic events, and they're fine, because then people are going to look at their own lives and be like, why isn't that person suffering like I did? Because it's not realistic. And here, this is realistic character work. Now, with the first book, I talked about Katniss annoying me. This time it was Peeta, but again, it makes sense. So Peeta is really just annoyed. He's angered of being left out of certain thought processes or certain things. And we understand, like, why he was left out of this, but we have to remember, he is a 16-year-old boy. He is not a mature adult. He's going to have strong reactions and strong emotions, because everything is so heightened and feels like it's going to be the end of the world, which, I mean, it could be in this universe. So it does make sense why he is the way that he is. But as an adult, I'm just like, oh my gosh, get an understanding of this, get a grip. But again, I have to remember, these characters are 10 years younger than I am, so they are teenagers. This is still their first experience in these experiences, so it does make sense why he is the way that he is, but it was kind of annoying to read. Now, something that I didn't like that I did enjoy as a kid was the romance, the love triangle. I'm not a love triangle person, but I do get that it does add tension to the story and to our characters, but I'm like, I didn't come here for this. I don't care about these guys fighting over her. Like, no, that's not what I'm here for. Do you think the world building improved as we are seeing more of the world? We're seeing the different districts. We've been seeing more of the capital, but I do still have some questions, mainly about the rebellion and how all of that got started. I'm really curious. But let's talk about the writing, because that was the downfall of this. It took 45% of the book to get to the main point of this story. It was just a lot of dilly-dallying and going about mundane things that I was just like, okay, get to the point. It was just so annoying. Like, the prose and words itself those were good. You know, it's still like that blunt kind of writing style, but this was so slow paced getting to the actual story. And then when we did get back into the arena of things, there was some info dumping there where I was just like, oh, okay, BT wires, y'all do your thing, but that is a lot for me to take in. So the writing in here did really disappoint me. I really do think this book has second book syndrome. I think this was filler to get us from point A to, you know, to Z, because we have to light that spark. We have to get this war, this rebellion going, and we had to catch fire to do that. That's what a spark is, isn't it? As for the plot, it didn't make me think as much as the first book. I do think one is how people handle fame and sudden wealth, and how that doesn't always fix everything. Everybody handles it differently. Some will be like Kay mentioned, go to drugs, alcohol, you know, excess. Others just don't know what to do with it, because now they don't have to work. They don't have to do all those tasks of trying to survive. They're like, what do we do with ourselves? And I think that can be even damaging on the mental health of just being like, what am I doing here? What is the purpose? Now that I have everything I've ever wanted, what's the point of it all? That was a really big theme of the story, of how you handle fame, and how fame and money doesn't solve everything in life. That really just having the ones you love and having them safe, warm, food in their belly is really the most important thing. And something that I didn't pick up the first time around either was so much of this is the Capitol's fault, because they're wishy-washy back and forth, and I think we can see that a lot in, you know, real world politics, that's just how governments are. Nobody's just like a straight line, and again, we're going to talk more about that with Mockingjay, that nothing in life is really simple, and a lot of times making big decisions, you really need to think about what you're doing, because they do have consequences. Something with the writing, there was a lot of showing rather than telling, and I did find that boring. And as I said, it took about 45% to get to the main part of the story, so the intrigue did kind of go downhill for me. Something that I loved was how little things did come back later, that there were no loose ends, everything tied together nicely, and there were just some things that I would have never, you know, picked up on, but the author did so well, you know, tying up the loose ends, making sure we got an understanding of this story. So yes, I did still love this book, but it's not my favorite in the series anymore. I'm going to give y'all a bit of respite from the Hunger Games with a brief intermission to talk about Madam by Phoebe Wynn. This was a mood read that I did, and no, I wouldn't recommend it. The character work, we have our main character of Rose, who is a young woman. She's my age, she's 26. She is going to work at this prestigious school, this all-girls school. And at times she does have empathy for these students, and other times she's just ice cold, and I could not root for her. I really did not like her, because her character work going into each chapter, I didn't know what character, what side of her we were going to get. It was just so back and forth, and nothing lined up with her character arc. Now with the side characters, as I said, we're at an all-girls boarding school, and this is set in the 1990s. The school is not really diverse. They are starting to, you know, bring in people of other races and other nationalities and that kind of thing. So they're all, you know, white British girls, and that just all, to me, they read the same, and there were a bunch of names, and I'm like, okay, there's a girl named Freddie, there's Josie, there's Bethany, but it was just, you know, hard to connect them to the people in the story. And the same can be said for the teachers. We did have a few male teachers, but never played too big of a role into the story. So all the female teachers, I was just getting confused of who's who, which traits went with what name. So the side characters not developed or not diverse enough, and then the main character, never knew what I was going to get out of her. Now this is taking place in an island off the coast of Scotland, so you would think the atmosphere would be amazing, but no, it didn't do a whole lot for me. Now it is kind of claustrophobic, because they're not really, you know, they're out of school. You can't just leave school. I mean, they occasionally do, but it's an old castle. You would think it would be really atmospheric, but no, it didn't play a huge part in the story for me. Now for the writing, I did like the writing, because we have, so Rose is a teacher of the classics, and if you don't know what the classics are, that means the ancient world, so Rome, Greece, Egypt, and she is telling them, or, you know, teaching them about these women of the ancient world. And I liked how we would get excerpts of those stories, and some of them were, you know, mythological women, some were real women like Agrippina, and, you know, other figures of those time periods. And I did really like that, and liked how it reflected on the story. I thought that was really interesting way to do it. So I did like the writing here. But with the plot itself, now again, fantastic, great idea. This is a school, and the English, you know, noble class are very like old-timey. They're very almost Victorian in their ways. And Rose is wanting to reform that. She wants to take it and modernize it, which, yeah, does need to be done. And it, again, it could have been a great story, but oh my gosh, at the end, it was just so crazy how things went about that I'm like, did this really just happen? Like, this is crazy. And again, with the character work, if the character work was done better, maybe I would feel more towards the story, more of an emotional pull, because you would think that this would have such an emotional, seeing these girls be in this situation, being brainwashed essentially, but I didn't feel anything. And again, this could have been such a powerful story of taking back yourself. And there is a savior complex as well, but you know, trying to save these girls. But when the character works, sometimes she's cold towards them, sometimes she's empathetic towards them. It didn't work out for me, and I really wish that it had. So no, I would not recommend Madam by Phoebe Wynn. Last book that I have to talk about with y'all is Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, the third book in the Hunger Games series. So as I keep saying, just seeing these character arcs wrap up, it's done so well, seeing how these characters get to be the people that they are. And in particular, in this one, I felt so immersed in Katniss's shoes, because she is in a whole new world, essentially, and she doesn't know who to trust. She doesn't know what to make of her life, and you really strongly feel those same emotions that Katniss is having. You really see her character mature, because now she has all this weight on her shoulders. Mind you, she is a 17-year-old girl, and she is getting better. She's not as impulsive as she once was, but she's still growing. She's still trying. So she's going to make mistakes. She's not a perfect character. This would be a series that would be so easy to have a Mary Sue main character. If you don't know what that means, it means a perfect character with no flaws. But that's not Katniss. All these characters here, main characters, side characters, they have their flaws. They're not perfect. They're like real people, even if they are in these like unbelievable, crazy situations, or being a leader of a rebellion, because you're like, how could I relate to that? But yes, you will be able to relate to Katniss, because she is such a real person who is not perfect in any way, shape, or form. I was honestly shocked that in this third book in a trilogy, so wrapping up a trilogy, the world building just explodes. The atmosphere is incredible, because as the characters are getting used to this new world, you're getting used to this new world. And it's just so crazy to see all that's happened in a third book. I don't understand, but I loved getting to unravel this new place that our characters are at, and just, you know, kind of exploding everything that we once knew and reinventing it. The writing is more so similar to Catching Fire, as this is told at a slower pace than the first book in the series. Intrigue had me sitting on the edge of my seat. Now, this is the one that, you know, came out the most recently out of the original theory, but for some reason I didn't really remember that much. And as I said, the world building just had me wanting to know more, wanting to know what would happen and how things would happen. So I wasn't as bored, or, you know, I didn't feel as slow as Catching Fire did. Something that I thought was great about the writing style, we have Katniss just is repeating things that, who she is, what she's been through in her life, as she's trying to get used to this new place that she is, this new role that she has. And it's really a great way to get the readers back into the story. I read these, you know, back to back, but if you read them years apart, you'd be like, okay, yeah, that is what Katniss went through. That's what she's dealing with. I'm back in the story. We go back to having those big questions like we did in the first book of what form of government works? How do you govern people? Is there a right way? And are leaders different? Are dictators different from one another? And it's a very hard question to think about, because I think if you are somebody who's wanting to be a leader, you probably have an ego and a savior complex maybe. It's like, are they really that different from each other? Another one, that the Capitol thinks that the districts, or tells the districts, you need us to survive. But I really think it's vice versa, that the Capitol needs the districts to survive. And that's like the people on top. Do we need them? Do we need the people on the top to impact our everyday lives? I think more so they wouldn't be where they were, are, without the people on the bottom, without the people working in their factories and all of that. They would not be where they are without the lower classes. That is another theme that was here, and I never really thought about that. They need us more than we need them. War, that's a big story here, and there's no straight line in war. Is war, like, is it okay? Is there morals in war? Is this good because it's against the enemy? Are these innocent people what their leader makes them to be? So if you like the themes in here, I would definitely recommend for a fiction one, The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. And that is, as I said, fictional, taking place in World War II. Another one that is nonfiction but told in a graphic novel format is The Persepolis by Marjan Satrapi, which is taking place in Iran during the Islamic Revolution. Those two, and there's movie adaptations for both. So if you're wanting similar vibes to Mockingjay, those are ones that I would recommend. So again, this was a reread for me, but I didn't even remember a lot of the stuff, like major character deaths or anything. So I really enjoyed, again, doing the plot puzzle, putting the pieces together, finding out how everything would happen. I'd be like, I think this person dies, but I'm not 100%. And if they do, how does that happen? And I'm like, but what did they do survive? What happens to their story? So I had so much fun doing it. Now, with the logic, there were some things that I would have liked a little more explanation on, but most of everything in this book makes perfect sense of why it happened, how it happened, and I think that is really impressive. So I did give this book a 4.5 again. I did love it, and I think this is probably the most powerful book in the series, but I do think the first one is a modern classic. Those are all of the books that I completed in the month of August. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it all the way through, leave a beachy emoji in the comments below. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in my next one. Bye. If you are familiar with my videos, you're used to seeing Sherman at the end of them. Sadly, Sherman has since passed away, but I would still like to encourage you guys to help your local shelters. Sherman was at the Darlington County Humane Society in rural South Carolina. I always have their link down below in the description if you guys would like to help them, but also help your local shelters as well. You can do that by donating, sharing posts like this one, volunteering, fostering, and adopting, which it's great to do all of those things. Great to help your community, great to help the animals in your community, and I cannot recommend it enough. All of my pets were rescues, they were strays or from animal shelters, and I love them so much, and I know how much love they can give, so knowing these pets at the shelter can equally give that much love, it's amazing. And y'all should totally take part and help out those local animal shelter pets, and please help them.